The galaxy was a vast and dazzling expanse, filled with countless stars that illuminated the darkness of space. Among these celestial bodies, one planet stood out for its beauty and sophistication. Azura, known as the jewel of the cosmos. Azura sparkled like a gemstone suspended in the void. Its cities were made of crystalline structures that refracted light into mesmerizing rainbows, and its people shimmered faintly, their skin glowing softly under twin suns. But amidst this brilliance lived someone who did not shine in the same way as her peers. Princess Lyra, heir to the throne of Azura, had been born without sight. In a society where physical perfection was revered, her condition set her apart. While other members of her species could see in ways humans could only dream of, with vision, extending beyond visible wavelengths, Lyra relied on different senses entirely. Her hearing was sharp enough to detect subtle shifts in tone, her touch sensitive enough to feel vibrations through solid objects, and her telepathic abilities unparalleled among her kind. Yet none of these gifts mattered much to the courtiers, who whispered behind closed doors about how unfit she was to rule. Lyra moved gracefully through the grand halls of the palace, her bare feet brushing against cool marble floors. She carried herself with quiet dignity, ignoring the murmurs that followed her every step. To most, she appeared serene, almost ethereal, but inside, she felt the weight of their judgment. It wasn't just pity. It was something deeper, an unspoken belief that she lacked what it took to lead. And now, as preparations began for the sacred bonding ceremony, those doubts threatened to overshadow everything else. The bonding ceremony was a tradition older than recorded history. Every member of the royal family was required to form a mental link with a partner from another world, strengthening ties between civilizations. For centuries, dignitaries from across the galaxy had eagerly sought alliances with Azura's rulers, hoping to gain favor and prestige. But when word spread that this year's candidate was blind, interest waned dramatically. No one wanted to risk being paired with someone they deemed flawed. Elias Venn stared at the holographic invitation hovering above his desk, its golden script shimmering faintly. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as he tried to process what he'd just read. Earth had only recently joined the interstellar community after decades of isolation, and humanity still struggled to find its footing among more advanced species. When the Emperor of Azura personally extended an invitation to attend the bonding ceremony, Elias saw it as an opportunity, a chance to prove that humans were worthy contributors to galactic affairs. Still, there was no denying the pressure. As Earth's ambassador, Elias knew his actions would reflect on all of humanity. If he failed to make a good impression, it could damage relations for years to come. With a deep breath, he accepted the invitation and boarded a sleek spacecraft, bound for Azura. When Elias arrived, he was struck by the sheer magnificence of the planet. The air smelled sweet, tinged with floral notes, and the sky glowed with hues of lavender and gold. Even the palace itself seemed alive, its crystalline walls pulsating gently as if breathing. Despite the awe-inspiring surroundings, however, Elias couldn't ignore the tension simmering beneath the surface. At the welcome banquet, he found himself seated near the edge of the room, observing the interactions around him. Most guests avoided looking directly at Lyra, though she sat calmly beside her father, the Emperor. Her presence commanded attention even as others pretended otherwise. Elias noticed how elegantly she held herself, tilting her head slightly as if listening intently to the conversation swirling around her. There was something magnetic about her, something that drew him in despite his initial hesitation. Later that evening, Elias approached the Emperor to express his gratitude for the invitation. The conversation turned unexpectedly serious when the Emperor mentioned Lyra's predicament. "Few have shown interest in forming a bond with my daughter," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "They see her blindness as a weakness, though I know it is anything but." Elias hesitated before responding. He didn't want to overstep, but curiosity got the better of him. "May I speak with her?" he asked cautiously. "I'd like to understand her perspective." The Emperor studied him for a moment before nodding. She would appreciate that. That night, Elias met Lyra in a secluded garden overlooking the palace grounds. Moonlight bathed the area in silver, casting long shadows across the lush greenery. Lyra stood near a fountain, her fingers trailing lightly over the smooth stone rim. Though her eyes remained unfocused, her expression radiated calm confidence. "You must be Ambassador Ven," she said, turning toward him with uncanny accuracy. Her voice was soft yet firm, carrying a hint of amusement. "I sensed your approach." Elias blinked, momentarily taken aback. "You sensed me?" "I can feel disturbances in the air," she explained, smiling faintly. "And emotions leave. Imprints too. Yours are curious, hesitant but sincere." For the next hour they talked. Lyra shared stories of growing up in a world that often dismissed her, while Elias spoke of humanity's struggles to adapt to life among the stars. They found common ground in their shared experiences of feeling like outsiders. By the time they parted ways, Elias realized he had underestimated her, not because of her blindness, but because of the depth of her insight. As he returned to his quarters, Elias couldn't shake the image of Lyra standing confidently beneath the stars. She wasn't defined by what she lacked. Instead, she embodied resilience and grace. And perhaps, he thought, that was exactly what made her extraordinary. The morning suns of Azura rose in tandem, casting a warm golden glow over the palace gardens. Elias stood by the large arched windows of his guest quarters, gazing out at the shimmering landscape. His mind was still replaying the conversation he'd had with Princess Lyra the night before. She had been so composed, so self-assured, despite the whispers and sidelong glances that followed her everywhere she went. It wasn't just her blindness that set her apart. It was her quiet strength, her ability to navigate a world that often dismissed her without letting it define her. Elias couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt as he thought about how humanity itself sometimes judged others based on appearances or perceived flaws. Earth's history was riddled with examples of prejudice and exclusion, lessons they were only beginning to learn from. Yet here, in this alien court, those same biases persisted, albeit in different forms. He resolved, then and there, to approach Lyra not as someone flawed, but as an equal, a person worthy of respect and understanding. Later that day, Elias attended a formal gathering hosted by the Emperor to introduce visiting dignitaries to the royal family. The event was held in the grand ballroom, its towering ceilings adorned with intricate crystal chandeliers that refracted light into dazzling patterns. Guests mingled freely, their conversations blending into a symphony of soft voices and melodic tones unique to each species. Despite the outward civility, Elias noticed the subtle undercurrents of tension whenever Lyra entered a room. As the evening progressed, Elias found himself drawn to Lyra once again. This time she was seated near a fountain in the center of the ballroom, her fingers trailing lightly over its smooth surface. Her posture was relaxed yet poised, as if she were completely at ease despite the scrutiny surrounding her. When Elias approached, she turned her head slightly toward him, a small smile playing on her lips. "You've returned," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "I assume you're not here to ask more questions about my blindness?" Elias chuckled nervously. "Not exactly, I just wanted to talk about anything, really." Lyra tilted her head, considering him for a moment before gesturing to the seat beside her. "Then join me. Tell me about your world." For the next hour they spoke openly, sharing stories and insights about their respective cultures. Elias described Earth's diversity, its varied landscapes, languages, and traditions, and confessed how humanity's late entry into interstellar society had left them feeling uncertain and unprepared. In turn, Lyra shared tales of Azura's history, its people's deep connection to nature and the sacred rituals that bound their society together. Though their worlds were vastly different, they discovered surprising parallels in their struggles and aspirations. What struck Elias most was Lyra's emotional intelligence. She seemed to intuitively grasp the nuances of human emotion, picking up on subtleties that even humans themselves often missed. At one point, she gently interrupted him mid-sentence. "You sound frustrated," she observed. "Not with me," but with something else, something bigger. Elias hesitated, caught off guard by her perceptiveness. Finally, he admitted, "It's just, we're trying so hard to prove ourselves to everyone else. Humans have made mistakes, sure, but we're learning. Still, it feels like no matter what we do, some species will always see us as inferior." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that feeling all too well. People judge you based on what they think you lack, rather than what you bring to the table. But perhaps the key is not to focus on proving yourself to others, but to trust in your own worth." Her words lingered in Elias's mind long after their conversation ended. For the first time since arriving on Azura, he felt a sense of clarity. If Lyra could face adversity with such grace and resilience, then surely he could find the courage to stand tall amidst doubt and criticism. Over the next few days, Elias and Lyra continued to meet privately, their bond growing stronger with each encounter. They explored the palace grounds together, Lyra guiding Elias through hidden courtyards and secluded terraces that few outsiders ever saw. She moved with remarkable confidence, using her heightened senses to detect changes in texture, temperature, and even the faint vibrations caused by footsteps. Watching her navigate the world in her own way left Elias in awe. Their discussions ranged from light-hearted topics, like their favorite foods and hobbies, to deeper philosophical debates about leadership, empathy, and the future of interstellar relations. Through these exchanges, Elias came to appreciate Lyra not just as a princess or a telepath, but as a complex individual with dreams, fears, and hopes, much like his own. Yet not everyone viewed their growing friendship favorably. Whispers spread quickly among the courtiers, fueled by jealousy and suspicion. Some accused Elias of pursuing Lyra out of opportunism, hoping to gain influence within the royal family. Others dismissed him outright, claiming that a mere human could never truly understand the complexities of Azuran culture, or Lyra herself. Even within the royal court, opinions were divided. While the emperor supported his daughter's budding relationship with Elias, certain nobles grew increasingly uneasy. Chief among them was Lord Kale, a high-ranking advisor known for his staunch adherence to tradition. He argued that allowing a human to participate in the bonding ceremony would undermine centuries of protocol and weaken Azura's standing among other civilizations. "These ceremonies are sacred," Kale declared during a heated council meeting. "They require participants who embody the ideals of our people, not outsiders who barely comprehend our ways." The emperor listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When Kale finished, he responded calmly, but firmly. "Tradition exists to guide us, not confine us. My daughter has shown wisdom and strength beyond measure. If Ambassador Ven believes he can form a meaningful bond with her, then we must give him the chance to prove it." Though the emperor's words carried authority, the dissent did not dissipate entirely. Behind closed doors, factions began forming, plotting ways to sabotage the potential link between Lyra and Elias. Rumors circulated that the ritual might fail due to their differences, or worse, that it could endanger both parties involved. Despite the mounting pressure, Elias remained undeterred. He knew the risks, but he also believed in the importance of taking a stand, not just for himself, but for Lyra and for humanity as a whole. As the days passed, he threw himself into preparations for the ceremony, studying ancient texts and consulting with scholars to better understand the process. Lyra, too, worked tirelessly, teaching Elias techniques to calm his mind and focus his thoughts. One evening, as they practiced meditating together in the palace gardens, Elias voiced a concern that had been weighing on him. "What happens if we fail?" he asked quietly. "If the link doesn't work?" Lyra placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Failure isn't the end," she said. "It's part of growth. We'll face whatever comes together." Her unwavering faith gave Elias strength. For the first time, he realized that success wasn't measured solely by outcomes. It was also about the effort, the connection, and the courage to try. As the date of the bonding ceremony drew nearer, anticipation rippled through the palace. Guests from across the galaxy arrived daily, filling the halls with vibrant colors and exotic scents. The air buzzed with excitement and apprehension. Everyone wondered whether the human ambassador would rise to the occasion or falter under the weight of expectation. Elias and Lyra, however, remained focused. Together, they forged a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and a shared vision of unity. Though challenges lay ahead, they faced them side by side, determined to show the galaxy that true strength lies not in perfection, but in embracing imperfections and finding beauty in the unexpected. The morning of the bonding ceremony dawned with an eerie stillness, as if the entire planet of Azura was holding its breath. Twin suns bathed the palace in a soft golden light, casting long shadows across the crystalline walls. Inside, servants bustled quietly, preparing for the event that would determine not only Lyra and Elias's futures, but also the fate of interstellar relations between Azura and Earth. Elias woke early, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He had spent weeks studying the ancient texts and practicing meditation techniques under Lyra's guidance, yet nothing could fully prepare him for the unknown. The mind link ritual was unlike anything humans had ever experienced, a merging of consciousnesses so profound it bordered on mystical. Success required absolute trust, focus, and vulnerability. Failure could mean mental harm, or worse, irreversible damage to both participants. As he dressed in ceremonial robes provided by the royal family, Elias caught glimpses of himself in the reflective surfaces of the room. The outfit shimmered, faintly, woven from threads infused with iridescent minerals native to Azura. Though elegant, it felt heavy on his shoulders, not just because of its weight, but because of the responsibility it symbolized. He took a deep breath, reminding himself why he had volunteered for this. It wasn't about proving humanity's worth or gaining power. It was about showing the galaxy that differences could be strengths, not weaknesses. Down the hall, Lyra prepared. In solitude, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into her own ceremonial attire. Her gown flowed like liquid silver, designed to enhance her connection to the energy fields that surrounded Azura. She exuded calmness, though inside, she too felt the weight of expectation. For years, she had carried the burden of being seen as less than by her peers. Now, standing on the brink of something monumental, she allowed herself a flicker of hope. If she and Elias succeeded, it would prove that bonds could transcend physical limitations and perhaps inspire others to embrace diversity in ways they never imagined. By midday, the palace grounds were alive with activity. Thousands of dignitaries, scholars and spectators gathered beneath a massive dome constructed specifically for the occasion. The structure sparkled like a jewel, its translucent panels refracting sunlight into cascading rainbows that danced across the crowd. Musicians played ethereal melodies on instruments made from resonant crystals, their notes blending seamlessly with the hum of anticipation in the air. At the center of the dome stood a circular platform adorned with glowing runes. These symbols represented the union of two minds, pulsating gently as if alive. Surrounding the platform were rows of seats occupied by guests from every corner of the galaxy. Among them sat Lord Kale, his expression unreadable, but his posture rigid. Beside him, other nobles exchanged wary glances, some muttering under their breath about the absurdity of allowing a human to participate. When the Emperor entered, accompanied by Lyra and Elias, the assembly rose to their feet in unison. The Emperor's presence commanded respect, his regal bearing radiating authority. He guided his daughter and the ambassador to the platform, placing one hand on each of their shoulders before addressing the crowd. "Today," he began, his voice resonating through the dome, "we witness a moment of unity, a bond forged not out of obligation but out of understanding. Let us set aside our doubts and fears, for the future belongs to those who dare to bridge divides." Applause erupted briefly before fading into silence as the Emperor stepped back, leaving Lyra and Elias alone on the platform. They faced each other, their expressions solemn yet resolute. Lyra extended her hands, palms upward, and Elias hesitated only for a moment before placing his own hands gently atop hers. Their touch was electric, sending a subtle vibration through their bodies. Group of elders clad in flowing robes approached, chanting softly in an ancient tongue. As their voices grew louder, tendrils of energy began to swirl around the platform, forming a luminous cocoon that enveloped Lyra and Elias. The air crackled with power, and the runes on the floor pulsed brighter, casting shifting patterns of light across the dome. For Elias, the initial sensation was overwhelming. His mind flooded with images, sounds, and emotions, some familiar, others completely alien. He felt as though he were drowning in a sea of sensations, unable to distinguish where he ended and Lyra began. Panic threatened to take hold, but then he remembered her advice. Breathe. Focus. Trust. Lyra, meanwhile, navigated the chaos with practiced ease. She sensed Elias's struggle and reached out to him, not physically but mentally. Her presence was calming, like a steady anchor amidst the storm. Slowly, she guided him through the labyrinth of her inner world, revealing landscapes shaped by emotion rather than sight. Colors danced in vibrant hues representing joy, sorrow, curiosity, and determination. Sounds morphed into tangible shapes, each note carrying layers of meaning. Elias marveled at the beauty of it all. In Lyra's mind, there were no boundaries, no limitations imposed by physical senses. Everything existed in harmony, interconnected and infinite. For the first time, he understood how deeply she perceived the universe, not through eyes but through the essence of life itself. But the journey wasn't without challenges. As they delved deeper into the link, they encountered fragments of fear and doubt buried within themselves. For Elias, it was the lingering insecurity of representing humanity, a species often dismissed as primitive. For Lyra, it was the pain of rejection, the years spent feeling unworthy of love and acceptance. These emotions manifested as dark clouds, threatening to pull them apart. Yet instead of retreating, they confronted these shadows together. Elias drew strength from Lyra's resilience, while she found comfort in his unwavering support. Bit by bit, the darkness dissipated, replaced by a radiant light that filled the shared space between them. They realized that their differences weren't obstacles, they were complementary pieces of a greater whole. Time lost all meaning within the cocoon. What felt like hours might have been mere moments. What seemed fleeting could have spanned lifetimes. Eventually, the elders' chanting softened, signaling the end of the ritual. The energy surrounding the platform slowly receded, leaving Lyra and Elias standing face to face once more. Their hands remained clasped tightly, trembling slightly from the intensity of the experience. Both looked exhausted, but exhilarated, their faces glowing with an inner light. When they finally turned to face the crowd, a collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Never before had anyone witnessed such a seamless and powerful bond during a mind link ceremony. Cheers erupted spontaneously, echoing off the dome's crystal walls. Even skeptics like Lord Kale couldn't hide their astonishment. The success of the ritual proved beyond doubt that Lyra and Elias had formed a connection far stronger than anyone anticipated. As the Emperor embraced his daughter, tears glistening, in his eyes, Elias felt a surge of gratitude, not just for surviving the ordeal but for having been given the chance to prove that humanity had something valuable to offer. More importantly, he knew that his partnership with Lyra was only beginning. Together they had opened a door to new possibilities, a beacon of hope in a galaxy often divided by fear and misunderstanding. The aftermath of the MindLink ritual sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. News of Lyra and Elias's unprecedented success spread like wildfire, carried by interstellar broadcasts and whispered conversations in diplomatic circles. For many, their bond represented a triumph not just for Azura or Earth, but for all species striving to coexist peacefully. Yet beneath the surface of celebration lay simmering tensions that threatened to unravel everything they had worked so hard to achieve. In the days following the ceremony, Lyra and Elias embarked on a diplomatic tour of nearby planets, tasked with fostering alliances and showcasing the power of unity. Their journey took them to worlds both familiar and strange, each presenting its own unique challenges. From lush jungle planets teeming with bioluminescent flora, to barren moons where survival depended on advanced technology, they encountered civilizations at varying stages of development. Some welcomed them warmly, eager to learn from their example. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether a human could truly understand an alien princess or vice versa. Despite the obstacles, Lyra and Elias approached every interaction with patience and empathy. They quickly discovered that their combined strengths made them a formidable team. Lyra's heightened emotional intelligence allowed her to sense underlying fears or biases in others, while Elias's resourcefulness and adaptability helped him navigate complex negotiations. Together, they demonstrated that mutual understanding wasn't just possible, it was transformative. One such encounter occurred on Valora, a planet known for its volatile climate and equally volatile politics. The ruling council there viewed outsiders with suspicion, particularly humans whom they considered inexperienced and unreliable. When Lyra and Elias arrived, they were met with cold stares and dismissive remarks. Lord Terran, the council's leader, openly mocked Elias during their first meeting. "How can we trust someone who lacks even basic telepathic abilities?" he sneered. "Surely this is some kind of joke." Elias clenched his fists, but forced himself to remain calm. Before he could respond, Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady yet commanding. "Ambassador Venn may not possess telepathy," she said, "but his ability to bridge cultural divides speaks volumes about his character. Perhaps you should focus less on what he lacks and more on what he brings to the table." Her words silenced the room, leaving Terran momentarily speechless. Over the course of several meetings, Lyra and Elias worked tirelessly to address the council's concerns, proposing solutions tailored to Valora's specific needs. By the time they departed, they had secured a tentative agreement, a small victory, but one that proved meaningful progress was possible. While their efforts abroad yielded positive results, trouble brewed back on Azura. Certain factions within the royal court grew increasingly uneasy about the growing influence of humanity. Lord Kale, in particular, saw the bond between Lyra and Elias as a threat to tradition. He believed that allowing a human to hold such prominence undermined centuries of carefully maintained protocols and jeopardized Azura's standing among other civilizations. Kale began rallying support among like-minded nobles, spreading rumors designed to sow discord. Some claimed that Elias manipulated Lyra into forming the link, exploiting her vulnerability for personal gain. Others suggested that the ritual itself had been flawed, arguing that no true bond could exist between two beings so fundamentally different. These whispers reached the ears of visiting dignitaries, creating doubt and unease among those who had initially celebrated the union. Back on Earth, news of the backlash reached high-ranking officials, sparking debates about how best to respond. Some advocated for pulling Elias out of harm's way, fearing that continued involvement might damage humanity's fragile reputation. Others argued that retreating now would only validate the critics' claims, reinforcing stereotypes about human weakness and cowardice. Caught between conflicting pressures, Elias struggled to stay focused. During a rare moment of solitude aboard their spacecraft, he confided in Lyra. "I didn't expect it to be easy," he admitted, staring out at the stars streaking past the viewport. "But I didn't think it would feel like fighting a losing battle either." Lyra placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Change never comes without resistance," she reminded him. "What matters is that we keep moving forward no matter how difficult it gets." Her unwavering faith gave Elias strength, reminding him why he had volunteered for this mission in the first place. He resolved to confront the challenges head-on, determined to prove that the bond they shared was real and worth defending. Their resolve was put to the test when disaster struck unexpectedly. While visiting Zenara, a desert planet plagued by frequent sandstorms, they found themselves caught in the midst of a catastrophic natural event. Massive dunes shifted violently, burying settlements under tons of sand and cutting off communication with the outside world. Local authorities scrambled to organize rescue efforts, but resources were stretched thin, and panic began to spread. Without hesitation, Lyra and Elias sprang into action. Using her acute sensory perception, Lyra guided teams through treacherous terrain, pinpointing safe routes and locating survivors buried beneath the debris. Meanwhile, Elias coordinated logistics, leveraging his knowledge of engineering to repair damaged equipment and restore vital systems. Working side by side, they inspired hope among the beleaguered population, proving that cooperation transcended species boundaries. When the storm finally subsided, hundreds of lives had been saved thanks to their efforts. Grateful citizens hailed them as heroes, and word of their heroism spread far beyond Zanara's borders. Even skeptics couldn't deny the impact of their collaboration, forcing many to reconsider their preconceived notions about humanity and Azurans alike. Upon returning to Azura, Lyra and Elias faced their greatest challenge yet. Evidence surfaced suggesting that certain members of the court were plotting against them, intent on severing the link permanently. Anonymous threats appeared in encrypted messages, warning of dire consequences if they continued down their current. Determined to protect what they had built, Lyra and Elias decided to confront the conspirators directly. With the Emperor's blessing, they gathered evidence implicating Lord Kale and his allies, exposing their attempts to undermine the bond. In a dramatic session before the full assembly of nobles, they presented their findings, leaving no room for denial. "You speak of tradition," Elias addressed the assembled crowd, his voice ringing clear and strong. "But tradition exists to serve us, not control us. Princess Lyra and I have shown that unity is possible, not despite our differences but because of them. If you truly value the future of Azura, then embrace change. Stand with us." His impassioned plea resonated deeply, swaying even some of Kale's supporters. Though tensions remained, the tide began to turn in their favor. The Emperor publicly condemned the conspirators, reaffirming his support for Lyra and Elias's partnership. It was a turning point, not just for them, but for Azura as a whole. As the dust settled, Lyra and Elias reflected on how far they had come. What had started as an unlikely alliance had blossomed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of trust, resilience, and shared vision. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they faced them together, ready to inspire a galaxy in need of hope. The final chapter of Lyra and Elias's journey began with a storm, not one of sand or wind, but of treachery. Back on Azura, the conspiracy against them reached its boiling point. Lord Kale, desperate to preserve what he saw as the purity of Azuran traditions, orchestrated a daring attack on the Imperial Palace. His plan was simple yet devastating: sever the bond between Lyra and Elias by any means necessary, even if it meant destroying both of them in the process. It happened at dawn, when the twin suns cast long shadows across the crystalline spires of the palace. Armed insurgents infiltrated the grounds, their movements swift and calculated. The Emperor's guards fought valiantly to repel the attackers, but the sheer number of assailants overwhelmed them. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and energy blasts lit up the corridors. Elias and Lyra were in the royal library when they first sensed the danger. Though no alarms had reached them yet, Lyra felt the shift in the air, a subtle vibration that rippled through her heightened senses. She turned abruptly toward Elias, her expression grave. "Something is wrong," she said. "We need to move." Elias trusted her instincts without question. Together they slipped out of the library just moments before a group of insurgents stormed the room, weapons drawn. As they navigated the labyrinthine halls, Lyra guided Elias with uncanny precision, her hands brushing against walls and door frames to detect minute changes in texture and temperature. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotions of those around them, giving them precious seconds to evade capture. Their escape route led them to the central courtyard, where the Emperor and his loyalists had gathered to mount a defense. The sight that greeted them was harrowing. Smoke billowed from shattered windows, and the once pristine gardens were now littered with debris. Despite the chaos, the Emperor stood tall, rallying his forces with unwavering resolve. "Lyra," he called out, relief washing over his face as he spotted his daughter and Elias emerging from the shadows. "Are you hurt?" "We're fine," Lyra assured him, though her voice carried an edge of urgency. "Father, this isn't just about us, it's about unity. If we fall, so does everything we've worked for." Her words galvanized the defenders, reigniting their determination. But time was running out. Kale's forces were closing in, their numbers bolstered by mercenaries hired from distant planets. It seemed impossible to hold the line much longer. In the heat of battle, Elias and Lyra realized they held the key to turning the tide. Their bond, the very thing Kale sought to destroy, was also their greatest weapon. During the mind link ritual, they had discovered how to synchronize their thoughts and actions seamlessly. Now, under pressure, they tapped into that connection once more. Elias took charge of strategic planning, using his quick thinking to anticipate enemy movements and devise counterattacks. Lyra, meanwhile, focused on reading the emotional currents of the battlefield. She could sense fear, anger, and desperation emanating from both sides, allowing her to pinpoint vulnerabilities in Kale's ranks. Together they directed the Emperor's forces with remarkable efficiency, exploiting gaps in the enemy's defenses and rallying their allies to fight back. One pivotal moment came when Kale himself appeared on the battlefield, leading a final assault. His presence sent a ripple of unease through the defenders, but Lyra and Elias refused to falter. As Kyle advanced, Lyra stepped forward, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. "You claim to fight for tradition," she declared, her tone firm and unyielding. "But true tradition is not about clinging to the past. It's about adapting to ensure our survival. Your actions today betray everything our people stand for." Kyle hesitated, visibly shaken by her words. For all his arrogance, he had never expected Lyra to confront him directly. Seizing the opportunity, Elias signaled to a group of guards, who swiftly disarmed Kale and his remaining followers. With their leader captured, the insurgents surrendered, bringing the conflict to an end. When the dust settled, the palace was left scarred but standing. Exhausted but victorious, Lyra and Elias joined the Emperor in addressing the court. The assembly hall buzzed with tension as nobles and dignitaries awaited answers and accountability. When the Emperor rose to speak, his voice carried the weight of authority tempered by compassion. "This day has tested us all," he began, surveying the crowd. "But it has also shown us the strength of unity. Princess Lyra and Ambassador Ven have proven that differences are not divisions, they are bridges. Let this be a lesson to us all. Progress requires courage, and courage demands trust." He then announced his decision to name Elias an honorary member of the royal family, cementing humanity's place among Azura's allies. The declaration drew applause from many, though some still clung to their doubts. Yet even the skeptics couldn't deny the evidence before them. Two beings from vastly different worlds had forged a bond stronger than any weapon. In the weeks that followed, news of Azura's triumph spread throughout the galaxy. Leaders from neighboring civilizations sent envoys to congratulate the Emperor and express interest in forming similar alliances. Inspired by Lyra and Elias's example, other species began rethinking outdated prejudices, opening doors to collaboration and mutual understanding. For Lyra and Elias, life became a whirlwind of diplomacy and exploration. They traveled together, visiting planets far beyond Azura's borders to share their story and promote peace. Each stop brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to inspire change. On one planet, they mediated a long-standing territorial dispute. On another, they helped establish a cultural exchange program that celebrated diversity rather than feared it. Back on Earth, Elias's efforts earned him widespread acclaim. Humanity, once dismissed as inexperienced and insignificant, gained newfound respect among interstellar communities. Leaders praised his dedication to bridging divides, while ordinary citizens looked to him as a symbol of hope. Meanwhile, Lyra became an icon of resilience and grace, her blindness no longer seen as a flaw but as a testament to the power of inner strength. Years passed, and their partnership evolved into something deeper, a lifelong commitment built on trust, love, and shared purpose. Together they founded the Unity Accord, an organization dedicated to fostering cooperation among disparate cultures. Through its initiatives, countless conflicts were resolved and countless lives were transformed. As they stood side by side beneath the twin suns of Azura, watching the horizon shimmer with golden light, Lyra and Elias reflected on how far they had come. What had started as an unlikely alliance had grown into a legacy, a beacon of hope in a galaxy often divided by fear and misunderstanding. "We've only just begun," Elias said softly, taking Lyra's hand in his. "And there's so much more to do," she replied, smiling. "But as long as we face it together, I know we can make a difference."